I've had them starting, I believe, at the age of 6 in California. And they continued throughout my life until the age of 47. I'm 68 right now. So that gives you a time frame in how they unfolded. The first experience that I had, I was with my family. That's my father, my mother, and my brother, who was 4 years older than I. We had gone one weekend, I don't know if it was a Saturday or a Sunday, for a picnic in the foothills. And we just spent a normal day having a picnic. My dad was fooling around, I guess, looking for deer or doing what he did. And my brother and I kind of played, just running around like kids do, climbing trees. And I think as the afternoon was starting to wear on, my dad decided that it was time to go. He wanted to get home before dark. And we started packing the car up. And as we were packing the car up, my dad said, "What's that?" And he was looking up at the sky. And we looked up and we saw an orange elliptical object streaking at a very fast pace in a downward trajectory towards the ridge of the foothill that we had had our picnic on. And I remember being kind of frightened and awestruck as a child looking at it, because it looked to me like it was something on fire. It was very bright. I could tell my dad was very excited looking at it. And my dad said that he thought that it was first he said he thought it was a meteor, but then he changed his mind quickly and he said, "I think it's a small plane that's on fire and it's crashing." And my dad said there's nobody around. There might be somebody that's surviving, and we need to try to get up there and see if there's anybody that we can help. The next memory I have is being at the top of the ridge in the back seat of the car with my brother, who is asleep. My mother is in the front seat of the car. She's also asleep. My father is not in the car, and I'm awake and I'm alone in the back seat. And I try to wake my brother up. I can't wake him up. I try to wake my mother up. I can't wake her up. And I'm a little frightened and disturbed over the fact that my dad is not in the car. And I can see peripherally out of the window figures that are kind of off to the side and standing on the side of the road. But when I try to look at them, I can't see them clearly. And they look like shadows to me. That's the best that I can describe it.
How many were there?
This is a childhood memory, and I can only say that there was more than one, and I think there was at least 3. But to say exactly how many I think were there, I can't say. I also have to say that I think things were a little distorted at that point. And when I turned and looked out what would be my father's side window towards a clearing, I saw, I guess today, what would be referred to as kind of a disc. But
on the ground?
It was on the ground.
Do you have a sense of how wide it was, how high it was, what color it was?
It was gray, that I know. It was gray. It had a black door in it, or a black opening. I'm not sure if door is the proper thing to say. It had what I think were windows around it. I'm not positive on that point, but I think it did have some windows around the outside of it.
Do you recall the shape of the windows?
I think that they were kind of square or maybe rectangular, the shape of the windows.
What year would you say this is?
This would be, I was born in 1947, and I would have been around 6 years old, 5 or 6. So 53 or 54, 1954. And
How did you try and wake your brother and your mother when
I
they
tried to shake them and say their name, Bobby, and I think I just said, Mama, Mama.
and they didn't wake?
They did not wake up. They did not wake up.
Was your father with these shadow-like beings?
My father was just gone at that point, and I did not know where he was.
Were these shadow-like beings on the same side, and to what side was that?
They were on the same side of the fire road as the clearing and where the disc was, and they were a short distance from it, kind of slightly behind our automobile where it was stopped.
So if you were in the back seat, would they be to your left, to your right, or behind?
They would be to my left. It would be to my left, because I was on the side behind my father, and my brother was next to me behind my mother. I did feel some anxiety, but I think that the anxiety came from the fact that my father was gone from the car and I did not know where he had gone. I don't think at that point that I was really afraid, like at the object that I was looking at. But I'm not even sure that that's accurate, because I don't know in the aftermath how much my memory and my emotions were manipulated during that situation, because I did experience nightmares after that. And yet, if I think about this experience, I don't remember feeling any real or intense fear during the unfolding of it. I did at one point look away from this disc, and because I was kind of looking back where I thought these people were on the side of the road, and when I looked back where the disc was, it did not appear to me as a disc anymore. It looked to me like a log cabin with steps going up to it, strung with Christmas lights. And I immediately had the thought in my head, it's a restaurant. My dad has gone in to get something to eat. I want to go in and get something to eat.
Was it Christmas time?
No.
So did it, I don't know if one thinks about it at the age of 6, but did it strike you as odd that there were Christmas lights hanging at a time when it wasn't Christmas?
No, that did not enter my head.
What time of year was it?
I think that it would be getting towards the fall. I believe that somehow my perception of things was possibly being interfered with at that point. I definitely have thought over the years, when I think back about it, that even as a 6-year-old child, I should have been a lot more frightened than I remember myself being at the time. I don't remember fear being part of this incident at all. I don't remember getting out of the car. I don't remember getting out of the car. I have a vague memory of possibly moving up a ramp, but that's not a really clear memory. It's a very fuzzy memory. I think it's possible that something may have been assisting me from the side, but I'm not positive about that. That's not clear. And the first relatively clear memory that I have is being in a room, a circular room. It was a very plain room. It had a just a plain floor. Everything looked gray to me. It opened up to another circular room. There was an opening. In that circular room, there were several tables. I believe my father was on one of the tables, off to the right. There were several other people on tables in that room. There were beings working amongst these people on the tables. Some of them were very small and thin, and some were taller. I could not see them clearly. My vision would blur when I tried to see them clearly. I have a sense that they were moving very fast and that the activity was very methodical and fast and kind of at a frantic pace in that room. But I didn't look at it very long. Again, my attention was redirected, and it came back to the room that I was in. And the room that I was in, which was kind of softly lit with just, I don't know, I didn't see any lights. I don't know where the light was coming from. There was directly in front of me kind of a curved, I don't know, console like against the wall, and kind of a podium type console in front of it. It was low and it was small. I could see over it. And there was a person or a being behind that. He was male. To me as a kid, he appeared to me, he had kind of a uniform on. He had a cap on.
What color was that?
Dark. It looked dark. I would say, I'm not sure, maybe dark gray, dark black.
You say it's a he, so you could
It was a he.
get a clearer sense of the looks.
I could see him better than anybody else.
Tell me what you see when you look at him.
I see he was small. He had a pale face, a small mouth, and he had large dark eyes that kind of, to me, slanted and kind of went around the side of his head. And I had a good friend in school at that time. Her name was Patty. I shouldn't say her name. Her name was Patty. But she was Japanese. And to me, as a kid, I thought, I guess I was trying to think in my mind, what is he? Like, what does he look like? And to me, I thought he looked the most like Patty of anything that I knew. But definitely he didn't really look like Patty.
What about ears and nose?
Nose, I don't recall seeing anything, and I don't believe I saw any ears at all.
And now you're seeing him. Did you have an emotional reaction as a small child?
I had an immediate telepathic communication from him. And the communication, he said to me, "How come you're not afraid?"
And then what happened?
I told him, I don't know. I don't know.
And what more took place?
I asked him at that point, and I don't know how I asked, whether I actually spoke or not. I asked him who he was and where he was from. And he said to me to look to my left, to look to the wall to my left. And it was a solid wall, like this wall. But when I looked at it, it started to I don't know, ripple like water to me. And as it started to ripple, it became like a television screen or transparent like a window. And I could see stars against a dark sky. And it was changing very quickly. Everything was changing on it very quickly. And he said, "Do you know what you're looking at?" And I said, "I'm looking at the sky." And he said, "You're not looking at the sky. You're looking at space." And he said, "You see, you wouldn't understand."
How did you respond to that?
I felt, I don't know if a little kid can kind of feel belittled, but that's how I felt. I felt kind of stupid at that point. So,
Did the communication continue?
no. And I got the impression that he did not want to communicate with me or to continue any communication.
Did the screen change at that point, or were you still seeing things change quickly?
I have no memory of that at that point. I will tell you that behind me there was a curved seat along the wall, and there were, I want to say, maybe 3 people on the seats that appeared to be asleep.
Human being people or their type of people?
I don't know. I either couldn't see them clearly or I can't remember them clearly. But there was a man standing up by the seat, and he was very human to me. He looked drugged, and he looked, to me, even as a child, terrified.
So as a child, at 6 years old, you had the sense this is a man who looks drugged?
I didn't think that he looked fully conscious. I thought that he looked like he had something wrong with him and that he could not interact with his surroundings. And I felt sorry for him, immensely sorry. And I did, I believe, walk towards him and try to put my hand on his arm.
Then what happened?
I don't know. I don't have a clear memory after that.
When you were in front of this person with the hat, sitting behind the console, you expressed wanting to know where you were.
Yes.
Were you concerned about your father and where he was?
I would like to say that I was, but it did not enter my mind at that point. It did not. And I believe that I just forgot all about what was going on.
Now, did it strike you as strange that from the outside, when you're looking at the craft, you were saying it was approximately 25 feet, maybe?
Yes.
Maybe that. And inside, from what you're describing, it sounds more spacious.
I think it must have been more spacious inside. I think that maybe there were other areas to the craft. I didn't think about that as a child, but I have thought about it later in retrospect. But the only areas that I saw were the room that I was in and the room that I got a glimpse of when I feel that I first found myself there.
And then where does the scene continue from that point?
It continues with my family in the car. We're in the car. We're not even on the ridge. We are overlooking the San Fernando Valley. The lights are shining from the valley below. It's dark. It wasn't dark when the episode started.
When the episode started, do you have an idea what time of day it was?
I want to say that I think it was probably around 4 o'clock.
Because you had had a day camping
Yes,
and doing
yes,
family
yes.
time. You were packing up.
Yes.
Suddenly you see this fiery object
Yes.
come down, you drive toward it, you're inside for an undetermined amount of time, and now the first conscious back with the family moment, it's dark and the lights of the city below are twinkling.
Yes, and we're going kind of down into the San Fernando Valley. My brother is quiet in the corner of the car and still looking half asleep. My mother looks sick in the front of the car to me. She does not look well, and that's all I can say that it looked like to me as a child. My father says, just kind of to the air, how did it get so late so fast?
You remember that?
Yeah, I remember it very clearly.
Did that ever get discussed amongst the family?
No.
Not then. What about later years?
My brother developed bladder cancer, and that was about 6 years ago. It was terminal, and my husband and I went to California to see him. He was in not very good condition when we went to see him. He was at home, but I had made up my mind that if it was at all possible, I was going to mention that incident to him.
You mean all these years passed and you've never discussed it with him?
Never.
Why not?
I can't tell you why. I don't know.
So after 50 some odd years,
Mm-hmm.
or is it 60 some odd years?
50 something.
After 50 some odd years, you
Mhm.
bring up the topic with your brother for the first time.
Yes, I do.
What happened?
He was honestly almost catatonic at that point. He was on a lot of drugs. He was at home. He died not so very long after that. We had been visiting with him for a while, and he was barely paying attention to the conversation. And I said to him, Bobby, I said, I want to ask you something. I said, do you remember when we were little? I said, I was maybe 6, and we went for a day in the foothills of the Ridge Route and the picnic. And I said, do you remember seeing something in the sky? He had this special chair in the living room which he could recline on. He bolted up immediately. It was like something had galvanized him, and his attention was focused. And I said, I have a memory of a restaurant like being on top, because I didn't want to say I have a memory like of a disc being on top. And he said, I don't remember a cabin being on top, but he said, I'll tell you what I do remember. He said, I remember being on top of the ridge, and he said there was an ambulance with flashing lights everywhere. And he said there were people standing on the side of the road. And he said, I've said to myself all these years, what in the hell was an ambulance doing on the top of the ridge, on the ridge route, with people standing on the side of the road? And that was the extent of it.
How old was your brother at that time?
My brother was 4 years older than me, so he would have been 10.
So a 10-year-old could identify an ambulance compared to some craft with lights, do you think? Or do you think he made that interpretation because he didn't know what a UFO was and was never subjected to that on television or whatever?
My personal feeling, because of later experiences, is that that is what they wanted him to have in his memory, and that's what he had in his memory. I believe that what they want you to see and remember, you do, and what they don't, you don't.
you've been subjected to some kind of mind manipulation?
I believe that there is total manipulation of your reality and environment when these episodes take place. And I call them episodes because nobody more than I questions what is actually taking place when the episodes that I've had throughout my life occur. And I myself have changing feelings about what I think they are. I can honestly say that I do not have, I didn't have a clear understanding at 6 years of age of what had occurred. I do not have a clear understanding of it today at 68 years of age. I believe that what I relate happened to me throughout the years, that it happened to me with some physical reality to it. And it may be a completely and total physical reality, but the reality that occurs during these episodes is not exactly like we experience it.
Could you be more specific?
I believe that there's some kind of displacement of oh gosh, I'm not a physicist, but I had an experience as an adult, and in that experience, I actually did try to speak. And when I tried to speak, my voice came out like a 33 RPM record. It was very slow and not recognizable to myself. At the same time, and that was the only experience that I ever had that happened at night. Aside from as a kid, it was night by the time we were going home. Every other experience I had happened during broad daylight hours.
Are these physical 3D experiences? Are they experiences on another level of your consciousness? Are they during waking state, in dream state, or?
No, they're not. I can say what I think they're not. They're not dreams, at least as we know dreams. It's not some kind of fugue state. I don't believe that it is some kind of epileptic fit at all. I think that it is something that has aspects of our physical reality to it. But I'm not sure that reality is the way in which we perceive it. And I believe that whatever this phenomena is, that it moves in and out of the reality that we're familiar with.